رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Thank you once again for joining us for the final session of the 2025 summit. We've had a wonderful day of really enlightening and illuminating conversations with some of the smartest people really in the world, but certainly here in Pakistan, that understand this country, that understand the world, that understand the economy. We tried to think of the one person who understands all of these things from a vantage point that has both policy, economics and business, and most of all leadership intertwined. And over, the only name that comes up in that list is Shahid Khaqan Abbasi. Mr. Abbasi is the former Prime Minister of Pakistan, representative for the people of Murray over now 3 decades in various capacities in various assemblies. And for most of that career, he was a diehard PMLN loyalist. More recently, he's initiated a new political journey with the Awam Pakistan brand. He is, I think, courageous, forthright, really direct, doesn't mince any words, and is really fun to talk to for anyone that's had that privilege. And it's been my privilege over and over and over again. Abbasi Saab, thank you once again for giving me the opportunity to talk to you, and this time to do it in front of a hopefully interested and engaged live audience. The idea today was to look at the future, especially this coming year. And when I sent you the framing, a 2025 playbook, how Pakistan wins, your immediate comment without any editorial nuance was, that's a very tall order. Without doubt it is, but alhamdulillah, you're a tall man in multiple ways. So nobody better placed to answer that question. The people of this country deserve to live in a better country. And this country was imagined as a better country. And this country, to my mind at least, has every advantage that is possible to be not just a better, but to be the best country. And so I know that in many ways, maybe not articulated the same way, you have that same belief. So maybe we start with, while you were Prime Minister for the short period that you were, what about that experience confirmed this belief that this country has a lot more to give and a lot more to offer, and that potential is alive and well even today?
Thank you, Musharraf Sahab. I'm grateful for your kind words, although I don't merit most of them. So it's a long association, so I cherish your thoughts. I did not become Prime Minister by design. It was by default. The PMLN government was removed illegally by the Supreme Court. It was a terrible decision. The government was delivering to a certain extent. We had fixed the energy problem. We had CPEC was evolving. The security situation had been handled. The Karachi issue had been resolved. The law and order situation in Karachi. So things were moving forward.
Even Balochistan was showing signs of improvement.
Yes, there was cohesion in the country, and suddenly the government is removed. It's a shock to the system, it's a shock to the party. The party gave me the responsibility to complete the balance 10 months, exactly 10 months. And I continued the party agenda. That was my responsibility. But we also did introduce some innovative policies. We did a constitutional amendment, an amendment where almost everybody who voted for it did not want it at the end, for different reasons.
This was the merger of FATA with...
Merger of FATA into the amalgamation of FATA into Pakistan. We introduced an innovative income tax policy, which is the first step to introducing income tax at a lower level and a mass scale. So we continued with the policy of the government, and I think
The idea behind that was everybody pays less, but more people pay.
yes, you pay much less.
Yeah.
We, our maximum slab was 15%,
Yeah.
and then 10 and 5, and up to 100,000 rupees was exempt. But eventually, everybody who had a CNIC, who was a responsible citizen and voted in the country, would have to file. You could simply, there would be an app, you go on the app and say, I have no income, fine. We would accept that. So this was something outside the FBR domain. So it was kind of a, and we implemented it. We passed a finance bill, and it was in practice for 2 months, July 18 and August 18. And then the Imran Khan government reversed it. So I think
You also conducted regular meetings of the Council for Common Interests, something that had only happened a couple of times prior to your taking office.
yes, we had weekly cabinet meeting, which never lasted less than 4 hours. We even had 8, 9, 10-hour cabinet meetings. We had the NAC meetings, regular intervals, generally about 3-week interval. We also had the CCI.
Yeah.
And also all the other constitutional requirements are met. So we kept working. We used to work 12 to 14-hour day. And when I left the PM's office, there was no summary. The federal government operates on summary sent by the ministry. There was no summary in the spending in the federal government. We also implemented a certain level of reform in the political process, where the Prime Minister was answerable to the House. We regularly met the opposition, created a working relationship with them, and 6 weeks before we were leaving, we were able to amend the constitution with the help of the opposition. So it was a learning process for me. It's a job that you cannot prepare for, but you must have the basics. So I had been in politics for almost 30 years at that time, and so I had gone through the mill. I also had a life experience. I had worked in companies. I had been an entrepreneur. I had education. So these 3 factors come together. They prepare you for that job. But it's not a dull job in Pakistan. It's an exciting job. A lot of things, some within the constitution, some without, happen. And you have to absorb some of them, you have to counter some of them, and you have to challenge some of them, and some you work with and resolve. So, for example, with the establishment, we had a great working relationship. But everything was discussed on the NSC table, which again had meetings of over 6 hours sometimes. And we did not serve food, we served snacks only. There were no lunches or dinners at the table. But that relationship was formal, documented, and within the ambit of the constitution. Bajwa Sahab was the army chief, and I think on a personal level also, and at a working level, I think we maintained the decorum required for the position. The other things kept happening. The establishment's initiatives did not wane. We had the dharna in Faizabad. The provincial government of Balochistan disappeared one day. I went there, there was nobody there. It was quite a spooky feeling. You go to a province and there's no assembly, there's no government. There was the deputy speaker, a lady, Rahila Durrani, and the governor, Achak Saab. Nobody else was there. And then the Senate elections were stolen. We had a person who belonged to no party.
Yeah.
And he came to Islamabad and was elected chairman of the Senate.
Overnight, essentially.
And I voiced my dissent to all of this, but I absorbed it. I did not react to these things. It did not become a point of contention. I had many other things to do. So when these things...
So the choice not to react was a tactical one?
Yes.
Okay.
For example, the dharna, we just ignored the dharna. just ignored it. And then they got desperate and then they filed a thing in the Islamabad High Court that the dharna is creating problems for the people of Islamabad and needed to be removed. And the court passed an order that the police should remove it within 3 days over the weekend without using any force. This is a court decision, Islamabad High Court.
I remember.
Same thing, on the Senate thing, I openly said I will not go to the Senate. It's not representative. And I do not believe it's a fair election or a fair election of the chairman. I never went to the Senate, despite the fact that they passed the amendment. So I think you have to stand by your principle and you must work hard and have to have a working relationship with the establishment. You must have a intellectual ability or capacity which at least is equal to them.
Well, I mean, some people argue that having intellectual capacity that's equal to the military leaderships is maybe not the principal challenge. The more vexing challenge is having the resolve to take stands and to stand by them, and not to develop or adopt stands once in Urdu we say, "Jab pani sar se guzar jata hai." A lot of people might accuse some of our political leaders of becoming very brave after they've been in power, but that rhetoric or that clarity or that resolve isn't so visible when they are in office. Is that a fair accusation for our political leadership?
It's a bit unfair,
Okay.
But how I look at it is if you are a beneficiary of an unconstitutional act, a development which favors you,
Yeah.
then it'll be difficult for you to take a stand or something like that. I don't talk about stand, I talk about principles.
Okay.
So the principles, the Constitution cannot be violated. That's a principle, that's something that I firmly believe in, and I believe that to be the basis of the relationship with the establishment. The establishment is a part of the country, it's a part of the Constitution. So it's not an adversarial relationship. It has to be a working relationship. And it's a two-way street. So whenever you are a beneficiary of an illegal, unconstitutional move, when the rule of law is violated, then you have problems. And that's what we see today and before this.
But is there a major party in our history, Abbasi Sahab, that has not benefited from at least a partially hidden relationship with the establishment? I mean, I would go all the way back to the emergence of the PPP as the leading party in the 70s. That in and of itself, as the party that had not won the majority at the time, was the beneficiary of some quid pro quo. The early days of the PMLN, which you were very much a part of, was at some level the beneficiary of some quid pro quo. The post-democracy, post-Musharraf era that began really in 2008, but the build-up began in 2005, 6, 7. There were also negotiations between the parties and their leaderships and the military at that time. And then certainly the 2018 result and most definitely the 2024 results are also products of compromised electoral imbalances, if you will. That's the most diplomatic way of putting it. So if there is some degree of compromise throughout history, then the ideal or the ideated version of democracy that you've talked a lot about, that frankly I've talked a lot about and tried to impose, certainly on the model of democracy we've had from 2008 till at least 2000, I would say 22, 23, my own sort of thinking and my writing and my own advocacy has been that whatever it is, this is it, and we need to continue promoting it. But there's a counter argument that a lot of young people might make, that is that this ideated version has never existed. So exactly which rule of law and what exactly do we mean when we say rule of law, when the violations are so consistent? And of course, they're much more profound and visible, I think, in the last 3 years for many reasons. But certainly there is a consistency to these violations.
No, that's true. And it's kind of happened in different ways over the years. But any country which has had over 33 years of direct military rule and maybe as much as indirect military rule will have these influences. You cannot deny that. So it's not a utopian idea. The issue is, there used to be biases and preferences. Since 18, it's become very blatant.
Yeah.
That's where the problem starts today.
But is that a function of a choice made by the establishment, or is that a function of the era that we live in terms of the exchange of information and the visibility of public actions in this era?
Let history judge that. It could be a choice made by the army chief of that time. It could be a institutional choice. For example, if you look at 1988, Benazir Bhutto was considered anti-establishment, came to Pakistan, she contested the elections, and she did not win. But the other party did not win either. So you had a situation where it was possible to create a situation where she would not be Prime Minister. So I think a saner choice was made to let her get the majority. I was in that assembly, I was independent, so I was courted by both the sides. But at the end, I think sanity prevailed, and she was given that opportunity.
And you chose the wrong side at that time.
I kind of stood on the right side of history, at least,
Okay.
or in private, because I can tell you that I met Mia Saab and he wanted me to join the party. I said, I cannot join the party, I contested against you, but I am with you. My vote will be with you. Benazir Bhutto, my father was a personal friend of Bhutto Sahab from the 50s, he knew him. Nashirullah Babar Sahab we grew up with him, he was like a family member. So he wanted me to meet Benazir Bhutto. I met her and we had a long, not a long 15, 20-minute discussion, and she wanted me to join the People's Party, and I said I really cannot because my constituency does not support that, joining the People's Party. But I did promise her one thing. I said, you need 109 seats. There were 217 seats in those days. The majority was 109. I said, if you have 108, you have my word for the 109th vote. But if you have 109, I will vote against you. And in those days, the president invited a member to take a vote of confidence. It was not an election.
Yeah.
So Benazir Bhutto was invited, and you had to stand up in the assembly and vote for her or against her. And I think she got 113 or 114 votes. But the people who voted against her were much less. There were many members who were on the IGI ticket because there's such a aura at that, there's such an atmosphere in the assembly at that time, and they were like the pressures. I was also asked to just leave the floor and not vote against her and go to the lobby, to the lobby. But I did not go. But many members who were elected on IGI tickets chose to go to the lobby. So there was a disparity. If you look at the numbers, you see that disparity. It doesn't add up to 217.
Yeah.
So these things have always been there. But I think what has happened since 2018, we need to take a very serious look at it and withdraw from those positions. This is not a sustainable political situation.
And so the question of how Pakistan wins, I mean, is this the year in which we will take a look at this and devise a better way forward? Or are you, I suppose that's the optimistic view, or are you less optimistic?
I have to remain optimistic. If I'm not optimistic, then you've got a bigger problem.
Yeah.
The politicians have to remain optimistic.
Sure.
But the thing is, as things stand today, we've all become spectators. You, me, the 23,990,000 other people. 239
239 million.
Yeah. There's about 10 people which hold the destiny of this country in their hands today.
Right.
And they have to show leadership. And who are they? A few political leaders. The three top ones, Imran Khan, Mian Nawaz Sharif, Zardari. Then maybe Maulana Fazlur Rahman, maybe a few of the other parties. Then the military chief, the judicial chief justice. They have to sit down and resolve the situation. It's an extraordinary situation. It needs an extraordinary step. You have to withdraw from your positions. You have to leave the chairs you occupy and sit down as Pakistanis.
We've talked about this, and I wrote this in the public domain as early as November 2021, not 22, 21. I was saying that there needs to be some sort of a grand national dialogue. I have listed this exact list, literally the exact list, publicly, repeatedly, throughout 22, 23, 24. And this summer, I decided that I'm repeating myself to no effect. So you're right, not only have we become spectators, but our cheering or our applause is not being heard. There's no actual reaction.
There's nothing to applaud.
What I mean by that is our ideas about do this or do that, there's nobody's listening. And so for me, myself, I chose to withdraw. I stopped writing my column, I stopped engaging on social media, and I stopped appearing on television. Partly also because I wanted to step back and do some deeper thinking. But, for people, this is a country of, 240, 250 million people. Half the country was born in 1998 or later. They don't have the same memory of the 80s or 90s that you or I might have. And so for them, in a sense, all they've seen is this thing after 2018. Because in 2018, they were 19, 20 years old. So their adult life is comprised of this era that you're referring to. And so for this generation, where do you stand on the potential of this generation to remain engaged? My own fear, let me articulate the worst fear. The worst fear is that they will, as a generation, disconnect and disengage from the idea of this country. Democracy and Imran Khan and those things, I think, are really secondary to the very idea of the country being a viable, exciting place, a country that can be much better and ideally be the best country. That notion is not real for young people, is my fear. Do you share that fear?
I don't share your view that we cannot improve, or the general view that things will not improve. Pakistan has huge potential. People of Pakistan they're very resilient, they can absorb a lot, and they have the potential to grow. I think the failure is the leadership. The leadership of this country has again failed its people. That's the bottom line. Even today, it's the leadership. The people voted on February 8th. We did not accept their mandate. The people came to the streets. They even came here. You may agree with them. I don't agree with the methods, but people today they want a better life. They want a better Pakistan. They play their role, whatever that role is. They go out and work, they go out and produce things. But now they're losing hope. They're leaving the country. There's flight of capital today, and there's flight of human capital, which is even
talent.
more.
Yeah.
Talent.
Yeah. Talent flight is a real thing.
Talent flight can reverse if you improve the situation here. People will come back. If you give them opportunities, they would like to work here. So that is where the leadership of the country has failed the youth. You have to create opportunities for them for jobs and for creating businesses. That we don't understand. We've never done that. And we have never made the transition from a centralized government which owned everything to a market-based situation where the government is a regulator, basically. We never made that transition. And despite the political failure, the country kept running. to a certain extent. And I was just discussing this the other day. I really want somebody to kind of review that despite all these failures, Pakistan has made some progress. We've had some success stories.
We've had many. I
Yeah,
think
so yeah, exactly. So imagine if we had not had, if we had better leadership.
Well, this is my
This
faith.
would be a
This is
very
my belief.
vibrant, country with high growth, with high per capita income.
And high optimism
Yeah,
about
so
the
at the
future.
end, it's a failure of leadership.
So, talking about 2025 and the failure of leadership, is there any version of a successful 2025 for Pakistan that you imagine can exist in the realm of the possible whilst Imran Khan is still in jail?
That's up to Imran Khan. I think it's unfair to keep him in jail without charges. But it's happened to many people in the past. It's happened to everybody.
Yep.
Every prime minister,
including you.
Yeah, that is part of life. So I think Imran Khan should not dwell on that. He should not make it a precondition to talk. You have to sit down on one table. We're all from the same country. We all have the same goals, which is to improve the lot of the people and let the country grow. Why can't we sit on one table? What is stopping us? That's my question to all. It's like, it's not 200 people. It's not 50 people. It's not 100 people. It's 6, 8 or 10 people at the most. Why cannot they sit down? The country is dear to them.
Do you really believe that the country is dear to them? Because this is I think on the main street in Pakistan, there's now real doubts. I've always believed that it's Imran Khan, it's Nawaz Sharif, it's Rahil Sharif, it's General Bajwa, it's General Asim Munir. It doesn't matter. They all love this country, and they all deeply, deeply want to serve the people. They want to do better. So the issue really is something else. But I think a lot of people, when they hear somebody like me say this, this guy must be kidding. No, they're not sincere to the country. They don't have the country's best interests at heart. Do you believe that they really do have the country's best interests at heart?
I don't doubt anybody's intentions.
Yeah, same here.
A political leader who's gotten to that position
Yeah,
has something in him which got him to that position.
yeah.
So if people trust somebody, then you need to trust them also.
Yeah.
The issue really today is, it's a very unique situation. Every party has government today. PTI has KP,
Yeah.
the Muslim League has Punjab and Centre, and KP's party has Punjab and Centre and some part in Balochistan. Why are they unable to perform? They all have manifestos.
Well, I'm supposed to be asking the question, so you have to tell me why are they not able to?
Okay, so 11th year in KP for PTI. I don't know how many years for the PMLN Punjab. 16th year for the People's Party in Sindh. Have things improved? Has anything improved? Show me one success story.
No, so there are some. I mean, you have these big primary and secondary and tertiary healthcare facilities growing in Sindh, which I think they were badly needed. In KP, you had the health insurance plan. You had a dramatic improvement in the state of schools, school construction in KP. You had real progress on girls' education in the Punjab, especially until 2018. Really historic numbers, which I can sort of absolutely stand by and vouch for. Nationally, you had the Benazir Income Support Program. During COVID, that support was dramatic. I mean, it really helped people. So I think there are these examples of innovative, effective public policy in small pockets that each of the parties, the PPP's been involved in some good things, PMLN's been involved in a bunch of things, PTI has also delivered a bunch of things. But does it all come together? Obviously, it hasn't. But to say that there's not a single success story, I think, even during your time, you would have seen the evidence of these pockets of success, no?
It's all debatable.
Okay.
I'm talking about the bottom line. When you have 26.5 million kids out of school,
Well, it's not
with
good.
highest in the world.
Sure.
It's not just not good. It's terrible. It's number one in the world.
So why?
Why? Because it's a failure. The provincial governments have uniformly failed. You cannot create islands of excellence and deliver governance to the people. It's a holistic approach. You must deliver everything to the people. Health, it's your primary responsibility. You can't ignore health and give education. You can't, deliver education and not govern. You can't govern and not deliver justice. It has to be a holistic approach. And we completely failed in that. So nobody why aren't they running government today? Why can't the PTI show a model of government in KP to the rest of Pakistan? Here, see my government. Why can't the PMLN show it in Punjab? Why can't Sindh, after 16th year of government in Sindh, there's a large number of people in Karachi, some say 30%, some say 40%, who do not have piped water into their homes. They have water. It's delivered in tankers.
Yep.
Show me any country in the world that delivers this volume of water in tankers to its people. I've been to Baldia in Karachi when Mr. Ismail contested the by-election there. Most of the people living there, the largest single expense is water. It's not food, it's not education, it's not health, it's water.
And this is in your largest city, your commercial capital.
The largest city, after we've devolved into the provinces, they're flush with cash and they don't, because this is elite capture. You want to be a billionaire in Karachi? Get a water hydrant. Get a delivery contract. Who's paying? The poor. The poorest of the poor are paying. This is not governance. This is a complete failure. Look, 26.5 million people, nobody's talking about it. The Prime Minister declares a national education emergency. Does he fund it? Do the provinces spend any money on it?
Well, as you know, this is a point of particular pain and sensitivity for me. You were very kind. You were the chief guest at the launch of Alif Elan's district education ranking in 2017. I don't know if you remember.
Yes.
No, 2015, before you were Prime Minister. So I know that you've been sensitive to this. But I guess my sort of question is, if we're saying that the politicians aren't allowed to operate, and where they are operating, they aren't able to deliver even the very basic things, then the argument for a more robust democracy, doesn't it fall flat on its face? There are some people who are saying, actually, this whole system doesn't work, and so we need something very different, maybe something much more authoritarian. I don't know the answers, but I certainly don't think that the argument that we should give politicians more agency and more autonomy, when we are also making the argument that where they have that agency autonomy, they haven't delivered. Isn't that a contradiction? How do we resolve this contradiction?
These are excuses.
Okay.
If you're a Prime Minister, I've heard many Prime Ministers say, oh, मुझे काम नहीं करने दिया गया जी.
Every Prime Minister, maybe with your exception.
I have no issue. I have no complaint.
Why? Say why, because I think it's important people
Why?
hear it.
Because I worked hard. I knew how the system worked. I did not abdicate my responsibility. I did not abdicate my authority. If you abdicate your authority and your responsibility, then you're right. मुझे काम नहीं करने दिया गया. काम नहीं करने दिया गया. Take a blank piece of paper, write a resignation on it, and go home. Don't waste the country's time. Every day matters. Do we understand this? After the fact, you say, मुझे काम नहीं करने दिया गया. You failed. That's why I'm saying the Pakistan is a failure of leadership. The people have not failed. People have delivered again and again.
I don't doubt this, and I often say I think it's a trend in our elite to repeatedly talk about how the people aren't right and the people don't work hard and the people, they litter and the people don't want education. And I think that's all nonsense. I think this is a country that's full of the best people with the worst leadership. So I agree with this notion of failed leadership. But at some level, I think we can't keep demonizing our leadership and also expect it to perform. So when I frame it that way, I think, what are the legitimate excuses that the leadership has? One is obviously the civil-military divide. Everybody talks about it. We've talked about it. But if we park that for a second, the other big one that I find, and I want your views on this, the one that I find is much more credible is the capacity and state of the civilian bureaucracy and the public sector at large. That if we are going to have a country that delivers, it won't be with this machine bureaucracy or with this steel structure. Is that accurate? In your experience, did you find that the bureaucracy was a burden, was a disability for you, or do you think it's yet another excuse?
No, the bureaucracy has issues. Why don't you reform? What's stopping the reforms? 2013 to 2018, we talked about reforming the bureaucracy, and we did nothing. Then came Imran Khan, talked about reforming the bureaucracy, did nothing. We all created commissions and committees and
2008 to 2013, they also talked about reform. Yeah. So why does everyone talk about it and everyone fail to do it?
because our prime ministers want to be sovereigns. This is our dilemma. Our Democrats want to be autocrats. And our autocrats want to appear as Democrats.
Yeah. This is true. Yeah.
So when you have look at the federal bureaucracy today, it has no capacity. It's not their failure. We take the brightest people in the country, the brightest of the brightest, and we dumb them down into paper pushers and, the whole federal bureaucracy today, the senior people came to the federation when they were in grade 22 or high grade 21 and took over as secretaries. They have no idea what the federal government is about, what that ministry is about. Yes, they're able people, they can comply with the rules. But the world has changed. The world is not administrative anymore. The country does not have administrative issues. These are market issues.
And these people have no experience and no capacity
to
engage in these. I mean, how is the aviation division? This is an easy one for you, given your background and your experience of running an airline for many years. I fail to understand how a PAS officer or anybody that's spent 20 or 30 years in government supposed to be an adequate secretary aviation division.
Or anything.
So,
if he remains there for 5 years, he learns something.
On the job.
He's
so
a smart person.
Taxpayer funded.
But if he has an average life of less than a year, aviation today, religious affairs tomorrow, EAD 6 months later,
education,
defense, education, you go to a tehsil level. In my constituency, I have 4 tehsils. What are federal officers doing in my tehsil? One is the AC, one is the police chief in the tehsil. What is he doing there? What is he learning that he will use in life later when he goes to the federation?
Well, the original theory was that if you have federal civil servants working at the local level, when they become grade 22 officers and they're running a division, their understanding of how the country works at the granular level will enable them to make better decisions. Is that not a valid view?
What does the aviation secretary learn about aviation when he's an AC or a DC or a commissioner?
Crowd control, perhaps, when the EIA flights get cancelled.
The world has changed.
Right.
Our bureaucracy has not changed. The mindset
But whose fault is that?
The politicians. The politicians. Yeah. The bureaucracy will not reform itself. They can't. They don't have the authority. We have been unable to make one small change which can change the federal government to a great extent. The guy responsible for the ministry should be the minister, not the secretary. The principal accounting officer is the secretary,
Yeah.
not the minister.
Well, so I think Mustafa Impex and frankly that whole era of judicial intervention under Justice Chaudhry, I think really damaged the conception of who's responsible for governance. But
No. Mustafa Impacts was a good thing.
really,
Yes. What did Mustafa Impact say? That
Mustafa Impact said
the Prime Minister is not a king. He's not a sovereign. He can't take decisions on his own. It's the cabinet. The Prime Minister is first among equals.
but this essentially allows the Prime Minister to A, withdraw in terms of his agency and accountability, one, and two, it empowers the federal bureaucracy in particular to adopt essentially positions that are of their own volition. They're not, you see, the grade 22 officer is not accountable to the people. The minister, in some cases at least, is. And so the reason we want ministers in charge is because they will be accountable to the people. But when we distribute the agency and authority of the government from the Prime Minister's office across the whole cabinet, what we're essentially saying, because the cabinet is run by the division heads, which are the grade 22 officers. So to my mind, Mustafa Impex flipped the agency issue upside down.
No, that's not true.
So
The cabinet is comprised of federal ministers, not secretaries. Secretaries are there to support them.
but you've seen the slow and steady takeover of cabinet meetings by secretaries.
No, because the ministers are incompetent. If the minister knows that his job, it's the ministry sends a summary when they have an issue or issue is given to them, they send a summary to the Prime Minister's office, which then examines it and approves it and sends it to the cabinet. This is Mustafa Impacts. Before that, they could take a decision and that was the decision. Mustafa Impacts said no. The Prime Minister's decision cannot be a cabinet decision, it has to go to the cabinet. So, in theory, a summary is presented to the cabinet, the ministry presents it, and I've seen instances where a minister of that ministry opposed his own secretary in the cabinet meeting.
Well, we had repeat incidents of this, and we also had these strange situations.
Which is fine, this is very good. And then every minister can talk about that summary. It's discussed threadbare, then the Prime Minister has to take a decision.
So, Abbasi Sahab, to my mind, this is a classic example of Pakistan being stuck in the wrong debate. Because just before this, we were talking about how, for example, an aviation secretary who's not trained and who doesn't have the experience of running an airport or running an airline, much less running an aviation division, is only there for a little while and goes away. Right now, we're debating what's more important, the Minister for Aviation or the Secretary of Aviation. But the bigger point, I think, and this is the frustration that I think a lot of people have with these debates, is that the competence required to run an aviation division is missing in this whole equation, is it not? And really, that's the solution that we need.
Yes, the ministry, yeah, so you have to have competence at the administrative level. The secretary must have that competence, and he can't earn that by being in a tehsil and a district and a division and the provincial government all his life. He has to be there. Number two, the minister has to develop competence. The minister has to develop competence.
Sir, what, I mean,
and because he has to leave that ministry, work hard, learn.
okay, let me,
Yeah.
I want to challenge this, not because I don't agree with you.
Yeah.
I think everybody would agree, but in reality, over the last 30 years, I would struggle to name 10 ministers that I saw enter the ministerial realm and then learn how to do their job well. I would struggle to name 10. And you know how fond I am of ministers, no matter what party they're from. I would love to name people that I know and people that I respect. I may respect them for their family values and for their integrity in some areas, but the idea that ministers work hard is completely alien to me. Ministers work hard to service their voters and their constituency in some cases. some ministers work hard on the topic that they're given. So I can give you one example, but I think it's a biased one. I thought Hina Kar, when she became foreign minister, just took it to another level. She worked tirelessly and she was an incredibly competent minister. But honestly, could you name 10 ministers like that over the last 20 or 30 years?
There are people. You have to mentor people, you have to groom people into these positions. There's no system of grooming. A guy gets elected today because his father and grandfather were MNAs, and he wants to be minister the next day. And because of political compulsion, you make him a minister. Then what? So you have to bring people through the mill, but you have to change the system. When the minister has no authority, he can only request the secretary. What does the minister do? A summary comes to him from the secretary. He can approve it, reject it, or approve with amendments. That's all he can do. But he must have competence to do that.
When you were in office and you had Fawad Hassan Fawad as your principal secretary, and you had a really competent group of people. You had Ali Jahangir Siddiqui, you had Miftah Ismail. You had these really bright, the kind of people that I think a lot of people, regardless of political affiliation, can relate to and be proud of. To what extent did you feel you were able to make any progress on these issues? Or did you not?
I came through the mill. I became a minister after 26 years of remaining as MNA. I understood the parliament. I understood governance. I understood the government. I could navigate myself through that. I was given a ministry, petroleum. I could barely spell petroleum.
But then you
But
learned.
6 months later, I was the resource person in that ministry because I worked hard. Keep your door open, meet people, look at issues, talk to them.
So
You're not a Saab. You're not a Saab.
No, I understand. But Shahid Bhai, Abbasi Sahab, this is where my challenge to you is, can you name 5 cabinet colleagues in the 13 to 18 assembly that worked half as hard as you?
But I don't want to judge people. But the reality is, you can judge a minister by the quality of the summary he brings to the cabinet meeting.
So you were in those cabinet meetings?
I can name you a minister who worked hard.
Please.
You'll be surprised.
I'm really
Because
excited.
when I became Prime Minister, they were all my colleagues.
Yeah.
I was not like Mia Nawaz Sharif, who was like a party leader, that we had looked up to all our life. I was one of their colleagues. In fact, younger to some of them, even politically junior to a couple of them. So I said, you are all complaining that Mia Sahab does not hold cabinet meetings, Mia Sahab does not meet us.
Yeah.
I said, look, my door is open. Bring any summary you want to the cabinet meeting.
So who surprised you?
Number one.
Yeah.
You'll be surprised.
I'm on the edge of my seat.
Saira Afzal Tarar.
Actually, I really.
Who 5 months, 4 years before that was a housewife.
Yeah. But she did work hard. And
She did
was
work,
incredibly driven.
He worked hard, she understood.
Yeah.
She brought summaries. She made a difference to her ministry.
I think people watching will be genuinely surprised. And I'm not.
I've never said this, and now it's out in the open, but that's the reality. Other people did well. But the quality of summary, the debate that ministry generated, and I think her performances, impressive.
That is going to surprise a lot of people. How do we fix this? I asked you a question that you kind of didn't really answer, so I'll try again.
Okay.
So we're looking at 2025, and we want this to be a great. I know you want it to be a great year. I want it to be a great year. I think Nawaz Sharif, the Army Chief, the Chief Justice, Imran Khan, Zardari Saab, everybody wants it to be a good year for Pakistan. Is there a version? I mean, you said earlier that it's up to Imran Khan, but what are the things that you imagine would need to happen this year, early in the year, because time goes fast? What are the things that you imagine need to happen that would make it a better year for the country?
No, what I was saying is none of these people can do it on their own.
They have
It
to
has
sit
to
down.
be a collective effort. You have to accept each other.
Are you
understand
hopeful,
each other?
after what happened on November 24th, 25th, 26th, are you hopeful that that's possible?
It's always possible. Everything is possible if the purpose is to put the country first. Put Pakistan first and you will see a solution. For everybody, for Imran Khan, for the other politicians, for the military chief, for the judicial chief. Put Pakistan first. Not your position, not your institution, but Pakistan and its people. Put them first, you'll see a solution. If you can't, you're a failure. Don't waste this country's time. Go home.
If somebody said to you, Abbasi Saab, and I'm sorry, this is a free-flowing conversation. I might ask questions that are not.
No,
you know,
ask
sort of-
anything. I don't issue.
But if somebody said to you, okay, Abbasi Saab, you can fix this, but the cost is that you can never be prime minister again. But you'll be assigned as a mutual sort of interlocutor for the 2 or 3 major sort of parties here. Somehow, let's say Imran Khan decides that he trusts you, and somehow maybe the military establishment decides that, they can talk to you and trust you. And Mia Saab has a long history with you, whatever the situation might be now with you having split from the party, but they also trust you, and perhaps Zardari Saab also says that he can trust you, and that you're entrusted with the responsibility of bringing everyone together. But the cost is that you'll never be prime minister. Is that a cost you would be willing to pay?
It's not a cost. It's a privilege.
Really?
Yeah.
So what is standing in the way of you visiting Adiala, visiting Mia Saab, visiting Rawalpindi, GHQ, and visiting Nordero Firoz?
Look, I mean, I cannot visit jails. You need executive approval to do that. So I need to see proof that you are sincere to this effort. That you're not tied to your
Ego.
positions that you have today.
Yeah.
I don't see that today.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. So, and then the proof, the most visible proof is, let the president of this country step in. Let the prime minister step out of his cocoon and go to the parliament and extend his hand to the opposition. Let them reject it. We made politics totally divisive.
Well, it's a
And-
zero-sum game. It's either you're in jail or I'm in jail. And
Yeah.
then obviously nobody's going to choose to be in jail themselves.
Politics cannot be a zero-sum game. Everybody has to win. The country has to win. It's not possible that the government wins, the opposition loses, or the opposition loses and the government wins. It can't be this. It's unnatural. It will not work. And if we talk about the economy, just read what the Nobel Prize winners of this year have said.
Well, I'm not a
They've
big...
said, no, fair or not, they said a very basic thing. Countries which do not have the rule of law or are involved in exploitative practices, extractive practices, they will not grow. That's our reality. Why can't we learn from it?
So on that, so the best critique of Acemoglu, Robinson, and the other one, Johnson, Acemoglu, Johnson, and
three
Robinson.
people,
The best critique that's kind of modern and current is Yun Ang. I don't know if you've read her treatment of comparison between the U.S. and China's Gilded Ages. But in addition to Yun Ang, there's also a professor at SOAS. His name is Mushtaq Khan. I know that you know who he is. He's a Bangladeshi political economist. I think both of them say broadly that you can have different kinds of institutions than the ones that Acemoglu and company talk about in terms of Western democratic institutions, that there are other models. And China, of course, is the best example. But what often gets lost in that commentary or that counterfactual is the detail. And so Yun Ang has really detailed how at the local level, the entire Chinese bureaucracy was incentivized to grow the economy. Earlier you spoke about how the local level is supposed to deliver education and health, and I agree with that. But in China, it wasn't education and health that was the primary driver of local governance. It was whether you can grow the local economy. we in Pakistan have no notion of local economies because everything is so centralized. Every conversation we have about the economy has to be with the Minister of Finance. It has to be FBR. There's never a, like, what does a local economy ministry of the district of Mardan look like? What would their functions be? How would they talk to banks about financing facilities? What would we do with the green transition or with circularity at the local level in Mari Tehsil? How can we manage the tourism burden and the carbon imprint of so many tourists coming to your constituency? And what are the offsets? Those kinds of conversations, Abbasi Saab, they seem like totally alien. Like while I'm saying all this, I feel ridiculous because in the public policy domain in this country, from top to bottom, there's no existence of these kinds of conversations. So I take your point about Asumoglu, but the reality is we don't have any narratives of economic growth that are real and that are constructed the ground up. If we were to bring everybody together in 2025, how would we then infuse whatever comes out of that, whether it's a collective consensus mechanism or it's one party? Right now, the most popular party, I think it goes without saying, is the PTI. So whatever comes out of it, whether it's the February 8th constituencies as they came out in Form 45 or there was other mechanisms, whatever the mechanism is, I think my worry, and I think probably your worry, is that no matter what we do in terms of a political consensus and compact, it won't produce the competence that we need to deliver the Pakistan that we think is possible.
Our basic needs don't change. What are all these things that you talked about? Reform.
Yeah.
What is China talking about today? Despite its, I wouldn't say historic, beyond historic success.
It's miraculous growth.
Miraculous growth.
Yeah. They're still
What
talking
is
about reform.
America talking, the US talking about?
Reform.
Reform.
Yeah.
What is Europe talking about? Reform.
Saudi Arabia, Indonesia.
Which country is not talking about reform? Our own country.
Well, we can't get to
You
reform.
can't muddle through. We muddled through 77 years. You can't not reform. Every system in Pakistan has failed. I asked you, show me one success story. I'm a constituency politician from Punjab. I've been here since 88. Today, my education system is poorer than 88. It may have more buildings. It may have more teachers. It's a poorer education system. My health system may have more buildings. It's a poorer health system.
The water is dirtier.
The water is dirtier. There's less availability of
Roads
water.
are thinner. Yeah.
The police system is 100 times worse. The system of governance is 1,000,000 times worse. What have we achieved? Nobody talks of reform. We can't even reform the bureaucracy. It's a massive failure. You need reform in every sphere of Pakistan, and you have to start with, trust my word, it'll happen one day, but we're losing time. You have to divide Pakistan up into smaller administrative units. If you can do more provinces, that'll be great.
Can you do that with the existing PAS and DMG? Like my question is, this, you can start with that, but to me, it's almost like a necessary but insufficient condition, right? If you do more provinces, but you keep the same federal bureaucracy and provincial bureaucracy, it's not going to work.
That's part of the reform. Everything will be local. You can do it down to district level, do it down to division level. With the money, if the federation has devolved financial authority to the provinces, let the province devolve financial authority to the smaller units.
So who do you imagine would write this up? Let's say that, you are able to bring everyone together in January and February, and there's a new political compact in March, and it's the spring of hope in Pakistan. And now a new system is evolving in which people are happy. They're not as unhappy as they are right now. Whether that means Imran Khan is out of jail, whatever that is, people are happy. So now, who's going to devise these new systems of government? Who's going to sit and write this up? Because I really think that at that level of detail, a lot of us are out of answers.
You must agree on the basic principles. And that will be done by the political leaders. They must have an agenda, they must have oversight over that agenda to reform. There will be a reform by consensus. It cannot be a reform which is divisive. For example, I am a firm believer in provinces.
More provinces.
Every division, the British division from their days should become a province. That's my personal belief.
So 7 provinces in the Punjab.
35 in Pakistan total. 35, 36, something like that. But I know there is sensitivity to that in Sindh, in some parts of KP, in some parts of Balochistan. Okay, so let the provinces remain, but let them just be oversight administrations. Devolve everything down. Let the divisions have their own police force, have their own administrative people. Let them run their own schools. Let there be competition. Let them decide what the priorities are.
So let me ask you a sensitive
Yeah.
question. This is a good example because you're talking about a scenario which I feel is maybe unrealistic. When you were faced with the census results, because I know this came up when you were Prime Minister,
Yeah.
there were 2 parties that refused to accept the census results. The Baloch nationalists didn't want to accept the fact that the Pashtun population in Balochistan had risen at a higher clip than the Baloch population. And in Karachi, the Mahajar sort of voter or representative didn't want to accept, via the MQM, didn't want to accept that the, again, Pashtun population in Karachi in particular had risen at the rate that it had. And so that created a problem of political consensus. And if I'm not mistaken, either at the CCI or other fora, there was real resistance to the release of the census results. It's been 5 or 6 years, so we can talk about
It was
this
driven
openly.
by politics, not by the reality of the census. The census was fine.
No, but that's what I'm saying. So when you have that level of division that even the census result is withheld
It
essentially.
got resolved. It's a matter of resources. So Punjab gave up some resources that was allocated to the provinces. But we forgot FATA. We had promised FATA 3%
100 billion
for
a year.
10 years. We did not deliver that to them, and look at FATA. The situation is reversing back to where we were originally. We never let go of FATA. We still consider it FATA.
Who is not letting go? Is it the federal bureaucracy or is it the military?
The federal bureaucracy, the provincial bureaucracy, the military. They're just not reconciled in their minds that FATA is no more. There are people who are under the same system with the rest of Pakistan. We have to equalize them with the rest of Pakistan. We do not even give them the money they used to have, that 45, 50 billion that the FATA secretariat used to have. We didn't even give that money to them.
Yeah, it's
And at that time, the PTI was in power in both the federation and the province.
well, I mean, I think very marginal power in terms of their actual authority. Abbasi Sahab, I'm being warned that
Go home. If you can't, if you don't have authority, go home. Let the people decide again. That you have that authority, you can break up the assembly, go home. Let the people decide again.
Do you think that there's any party that has the moral stature to pull a move like that today?
I expect them to have that moral stature. Otherwise, then they should not complain.
But what they've demonstrated over the last 3 or 4 years, I think every party has demonstrated that they don't have that moral capability.
Then you will suffer. That's not leadership. That's a failure of leadership. That's what I'm saying from the beginning. Pakistan is basically a story of failure of leadership. Political, judicial, military.
I want to turn a little bit to, because I feel like we've gone from optimism to perhaps less optimism. I'm finding it, and this is maybe just a me problem, but I'm finding it difficult that we'll be able to, A, develop the consensus that's needed amongst these 4, 5, 6, or 7 key personalities, and then B, built upon that, put together a reform package that is consensus, that's respectful of each other, and that is meaningful. Because I think you cannot have any reform. In fact, let me ask this as a question. Is it possible to have a everybody wins reform?
Of course. If the people win, everybody wins.
No. Let me rephrase.
This current system is not working. Do we accept that or we don't accept that?
No, we do. But what my question is, can you have a reform in which there are no losers?
If something is totally failed, any reform you do, the worst reform will have positive results. You will
Let
always
me
win.
let me
You will
try again.
always win.
Let me try again.
Yeah.
If you want pension reform,
Yeah.
pensioners are going to have to accept a net hit. There's no two ways about it.
There will be some pain.
So that's what I'm
reform
saying.
has
Nobody
pain
is
in the
willing-
short term. The reform that has pain in the short term but pays in the long term, that's the reform you want.
But is
And
so,
it has to be across the board.
But nobody's
it can't
willing
be
to
that doesn't
accept.
affect you.
Huh.
For example, the Punjab Assembly has voted itself a 500% increase in pay. Why couldn't they vote a 500% increase in pay for the government officials of Punjab?
No, or the 500% increase in pay for Masis and drivers.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not even going there. The people they pay directly. Why couldn't they do that?
The Lahore High Court accepted a huge amount of money in terms of increases in salaries
yeah.
for all the judges of the Lahore High
The
Court.
pensions,
Yeah.
our judiciary cannot justify their pay structures or their pensions.
Especially not with the kind of performance that we've seen since the 2009 sort of renewal of the judiciary.
It goes back to selection. Our selection process for judges is totally flawed. We need to fix it.
So there's this long list of things we need to fix.
Everything. Not a long list. Everything has to be fixed. And we don't seem to realize it. We don't even worry about it. It's business as usual in Pakistan.
Abbasi, there are two things that are essential and that have been a theme throughout our discussion from the morning till now, and I want to get your take on it. It seems that there are two big gaps in every conversation. One is the absence of the participation of young people. Even though the median age in this country is 27, the conversation is totally dominated by 70-somethings or 60-somethings. And the other is women, that there is a complete absence of the engagement of women in a material way at a functional level. Are both those accurate or is there something missing?
To me, just being young is not a qualification.
Okay,
Or just being a woman is not a qualification.
okay.
You have to earn that privilege of serving. You must develop the competence, you must have the ability to serve in a position wherever you are. I'll show you, look at the women's seats in the parliament, 60. Show me the contribution. Show me the selection. So we put women there, but they're not women who have delivered anything because the choices were wrong. Let's say we put in young people. We have young people in parliament. Have they delivered?
So is the issue that they're young or that they're women, or is the issue that they're young and they're women, but they're the wrong women?
They
and
also
the wrong...
have to have the ability, the education, the experience to do that, to deliver in that job. Real life is not social media,
Sure.
where you can abuse anybody you want to whatever extent you want and gain followers. This is real life. You have to deliver governance. You have to work on issues. You must have the competence. You must have the understanding. You must have the education. And there are competent young people in this country. There are competent women in this country. Women are taking over this country.
But they're not...
Look at the medical schools. Look at the universities. Look at the results there. The women lead by far. You must provide them the opportunities. That's where the failure is.
Even in the conversation we just had, the two competent women we talked about in cabinet, both were female. I gave the example of Hina Kar, you gave the example of Saida Tadar. So there are some women that are capable even in the existing scenario.
I had 4 federal ministers in my cabinet who were women. And I was criticized for that. But they were not there because they were women. Because they were there because they were competent people who could do their job.
Is this, and again, I'm conscious of both your time and the time we have left together, this current stability that, I think is a bit of an achievement after the kind of 2022 and 2023 and even 2024 that we've had. We're now at a state where the inflation rate has slowed dramatically. We have some reserves. It feels like there's definitely some positive macroeconomic indicators. How viable and sustainable is this? Are we going to see some genuine economic growth in the coming year in 2025, or are you in the discussion we had just before this one? We had Khurram Hussain and Tobias Haq, and we had Kashmala Kakakhail. And the fear that I think the whole panel expressed was that Pakistan will go down the same growth path, this consumption-oriented growth path, that it always goes down once it stabilizes. And so we might repeat that old habit in this coming year. And if we do, of course, the crash is going to be worse whenever it comes, and it'll come sooner than it usually does because the cycles are getting shorter. What's your take on current stability? Is it genuine? Is it sustainable? And can the country grow economically?
Don't fool yourself. That's my advice to the government. Is this so-called stability policy-driven? Show me a policy that drove this, whatever you want to call it.
Well, somebody might say that the state bank kind of reduced rates at a pace that was manageable. Some folks might say that, the negotiations with the IMF and with other countries were conducted in a more capable way. But in terms of real policy change,
So there's no policy that drove anything. This is all event-driven. The commodity prices went down, oil prices went down, you benefit. You cut off, you suppressed imports, which suppressed growth, which suppressed jobs. We have a current account surplus. Good luck to you. Don't fool yourself. A country which prides itself on passing IMF review needs to have its head examined. A country which celebrates the arrival of IMF funds, I would take a deeper look at them. What are we thinking? What is the IMF? It's an admission of failure. That we are unable to govern ourselves, we're unable to discipline ourselves. We want you to come in as a lender of last resort, give us some money so we stabilize, and then impose your discipline on us.
Oftentimes discipline that may not align with the country's interests. I mean, recently been reading about the wheat support price issue, and the IMF's kind of very strident stand on this.
No, that's the government's failure. You promised the people 3,900 rupees and you did not deliver. You destroyed the farmer. Why? You have to, when a government makes a promise, it has to do good on it. It has to deliver on it.
But I think now we've had at least 2 decades of governments where the promises governments make to the IMF, or the promises the government makes to China, or the promises the government makes to Saudi Arabia is more important than the promises that government makes to the people of the country.
That's a recipe for failure. You must do good on every promise you make. If you promise the IPP something, it turned out to be a bad policy on your part, you can't penalize them today.
So we should have kept paying them ad infinitum till the cows come home.
No, that's what you signed off on. Show me, how can they cheat you? I'm just being the devil's advocate here.
No, I don't think they were cheating, but I think those agreements were they were really bad agreements.
Who made those agreements?
Well, the Pakistan Administrative Service
the government of Pakistan. Where was the failure? At least find the failure in this whole process. There is a failure.
Yeah, it's the competence of government authorities.
So that why is the investor made to pay? Do you think somebody will invest in Pakistan after what you're doing?
No, but
if you are saving ₹1 billion today, you'll pay 10 billion tomorrow.
No, but it's also that the irony is that the investors, I don't know if we can say the investor's been punished, because they've made a lot of money. And it's been rent seeking, really. It's not a fair.
I'm sorry, you made the contract, you gave the tariff, you gave the life of that contract. Where is rent seeking?
So this is
he took a risk on you.
This is a big a big topic that I really wanted to explore. it's not just the IPPs. In my mind, it's also the general fuel mix in this country and the green transition and how this country will adapt and adopt to the era of climate change. I mean, given your work at Petroleum and your understanding of all of the different sources through which Pakistanis consume energy, are you hopeful that this green transition is a real thing in Pakistan, or this is some sort of fiction coming from Western donors?
It's something that you have to do, you must do. But Pakistan is a responsible corporate citizen, a global citizen. Pakistan is a responsible global citizen, one of the most responsible. Using the same analogy that you have with the so-called stability in the economy that we have today, because our consumption is so low, our per capita consumption of energy is so low that our emissions, our contribution to the CO2 and all that stuff is very, very low.
But as you said, that's a function of poverty and a lack of resources.
So what are we talking about? We need to tell the rest of the world that your consumption has cost us.
It has.
Our glaciers are melting. Our rivers are flooding. They need to compensate us.
Is there a receptiveness to this narrative?
Yes, this is a narrative that's been part of this COP and all this stuff, and that's a just and equitable solution where the people who created most of this issue need to pay for it today. Pakistan has fairly green energy. On this whole, the power issue, what is the issue? The issue is dollars. When your economy is weak, when your dollar goes to 3 times value, your bijli will go to 3 times value. When you were growing at a 6% growth rate and you should have been consuming 200 billion units today, but you're only consuming 110 billion units, then your bijli will remain expensive. It's not the IPP's fault. It's not the capacity. IPP is a small part of the capacity charge. We never look at the problem. We try to find the culprit. And it's easy. It's easy not to understand the problem, not to fix something. If you don't understand an issue, how will you fix it? They told Musharraf Zaidi, oh, it's the IPPs, man, they siphoned off billions. You paid them billions, there's no doubt about it. But you paid them according to the contract that you had signed with them. The sovereign country of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan signed with them. Yes, you have an issue, talk to them, find a solution. You can't coerce people into solutions. Because the whole world knows it's a small world. Nobody will invest here anymore, I'm telling you. Reverse, gain the confidence of the investor. Today, your own investors are leaving the country. In Dubai, you'll be number 2 this year.
Well, this is, I think, before we get into foreign direct investment, we have a real flight of both talent and capital, and that's investor capital.
Yeah. Why are they not investing here? If I'm a Pakistani investor, I'm not investing here. Do you think somebody else will come from abroad and invest here?
I'd really hoped that we would construct a positive winning strategy for Pakistan. And I think in some ways we have. I mean,
the winning strategy is don't do what you're doing today. When people ask me, what will your party do? I said, we'll do everything that these guys are not doing, and we'll not do anything that these guys are doing. So understand your failures, understand the reasons, then you'll find a fix. You can't tinker with things anymore. You can't brush issues under the carpet. It's time to find solutions.
Look, I think the biggest solution will be some sort of a coming together on the grand political stage in terms of these key.
It's not a grand political stage. It's 6 or 8 people. Where are they? Don't they think about Pakistan? Doesn't Pakistan mean anything to them? The day they start thinking of Pakistan, you'll find a solution. It's not difficult.
But I think this is a question that, honestly speaking, I think you have to go and meet them face to face and ask them. And I think you have
face to face with you. I'm saying it openly.
Yeah. Well,
it's not a popular thing to say.
No, of
because
course.
we're so polarized. I'm saying everybody, every one of them, including myself, we failed. We have failed the people of this country. We need to find a fix.
Sadly, I agree with you. And I think maybe that's the most optimistic thing that we can present to our viewers is that we have a former prime minister and a substantial leader that's willing to own the kind of gaps that this country suffers from and is volunteering to try to address them and tackle them. Abbasi Saab, I'm constantly being reminded that we have to cut off. I wish we could keep doing this. I could do this for ad infinitum with you.
Dialogue is important, it's critical. Yeah. Constructive dialogue, not a divisive dialogue.
No, absolutely. So
I look at problems and then you'll understand the solutions. Put the country first, you will see solutions.
Inshallah. On that note, I hope we'll get to do this again
inshallah,
and do it often, inshallah. I have to thank you profoundly and profusely for agreeing to do this. This was a big deal for us. It was our first kind of annual Look Forward Summit. I do think that throughout the day we've come up with a number of things that look forward and optimism or pessimism. I think we've had very real conversations and conversations that inshallah will mean something and conversations that will hopefully prompt more discussion and perhaps even some action. So with that prayer and that dua, and with great thanks and gratitude to anybody that has watched today or will watch in the future, and a special, once again, thanks to former Prime Minister Shahid Khaqan Abbasi, as well as all the other panelists that joined us throughout the day, and a special note of thanks to the fantastic production team that worked on this, the Tabad Lab team that contributed and really made this possible. Once again, thank you. Inshallah, see you very soon. Assalamu alaikum.